Hi everyone. So just a little baby update. I wanted to let you all know that I was able to go in for a checkup. I had left my old OBGYN's office due to several issues that had come up with scheduling in the past, and then I disagreed with the doctors on some different issues with my being induced with 2 previous pregnancies. And one of the issues that came up was my daughter, Bethany. She was born 3 years ago. They induced my labor, concerned that my water levels had reduced, but they hadn't done an ultrasound and they were only going off the tape measurement. And at the time, I was just overwhelmed with the information that they were giving me, and that the fact had come up that they would even want to induce me and that my daughter could be having issues. So number one, I had her health foremost in my mind, and I went ahead with the induction. With a previous induction, they just induced me and everything went fine. With this particular induction, and she was baby number 5, they gave me Pitocin, and the contractions were the strongest contractions I'd ever experienced with any of my babies. All of my labors have been anywhere from 24 to 28 hours, and Trey being my absolute fastest, and with him I had gone into labor late the night before that morning, and he was born by dinner time. So the epidurals that they had given me in the past have always slowed things down, so we were trying to put off having an epidural too soon. I had a lot of reactions in the past where I'd get the cold shakes and didn't want to have the epidural too soon, but the Pitocin was so strong that all of a sudden, once my water broke, those contractions got so strong that it made it really, really hard, and all I could do was close my eyes and tell my husband not to leave my side. I really needed him there to be an advocate for me, and this is something that him and I have always discussed before we've gone to the hospital. So I really, in disagreement with how things were handled with my own OB doctors and then the pediatrician doctors after the fact that were the on-call pediatricians, we had decided we wanted to switch doctors. As far as the pediatrician doctors that were at the hospital, they weren't my own. It was Super Bowl weekend, and they sent my daughter to the NICU, which was terrifying for me. Basically, we had about 5 minutes together before they sent her there, and the next time I saw her, she was in an oxygen tent. That's terrifying for a new mother, whether you've had no babies or you've had 10 babies. We've never gone through that kind of experience before, and the reason they sent her there is they were concerned that she had a hole in her lung, that she wasn't breathing well, so they put her in an oxygen tent. They did x-rays on her and checked her and made sure that everything was okay, but they couldn't tell us anything. This was on a Wednesday. By Friday, they had told us she no longer had a hole in her lung. They had healed itself. She was out of the oxygen tent within 24 hours, but they had started her on an antibiotic. There was no reason to continue the antibiotic, but because the weekend had come, the pediatrician that had admitted her was not there, and the on-call pediatricians said that they could not release her due to their hospital liability without his consent, and he wasn't available. So holidays, Super Bowl weekends, big sporting events, don't have your baby then, especially if your own doctors aren't going to be there or you're being induced. So that's my personal opinion. So now I'm going with a new hospital, and I haven't had my tour yet, so hopefully I'll be able to make a video of that. We're really anticipating going and finding things out. It's in the same town. We are fortunate to have two major hospitals nearby, and if for some reason I disagree with it, there's another 3 hospitals within a half an hour to 45-minute drive that I can go to. Even Grand Rapids is a really big city, and there's a lot of good medical care that way. Just getting to the regular appointments and switching doctors mid-pregnancy can be difficult. So do your research and know your doctors, hopefully before you get pregnant, so that you're not in the situation that I was. I had actually, through a chain of certain events, couldn't get into my old doctor, and actually had to go to a Planned Parenthood for my yearly exam the last 2 years. I needed to find something else, and I was hesitant time-wise, and as a mother, you just tend to put everyone else before yourself. So my new doctor, not knowing how far along my pregnancy was, I was still nursing Bethany, and winter had come. We were talking about weaning her, and my body just hadn't become regular yet. It was a surprise to us to be pregnant. We weren't trying to have a baby, and every one of our babies has been a surprise. So I hope you caught that in the last video. So I'd given the kids some snacks, and they're knocking on the window for water. So everyone's getting fed, the kids and the animals. The house is staying clean enough. There's always issues where days are a little lazier, and I let the kids have their disasters. Right now there's 2 train tracks set up on the floor in front of me, kids knocking on the windows asking for water, another set of train tracks of Thomas and friends set up in my kitchen, and it's a small house, so things get out of hand. We're doing everything we can to get space, from closet space, donating anything to Goodwill that we're not using. It's amazing how much you don't use in a house. We have, as I mentioned, a very tall, very big basement. For the size house we have, it's a lot of space because all of the utilities are kind of off in each corner, and we have saved every stitch of baby clothing ever. So anything the baby needs, the baby has. There's 1 or 2 little things that we need to get, but we cloth diaper. So I'll be able to update you more on videos on breastfeeding, preparing the milk and pumping the milk, diapering, cloth diapering. I've done videos in the past with the homemade cloth diaper covers. So I wanted to get back to the new doctor. So the new doctor's got me in, and I told the ultrasound technician, and I told the doctor my concerns, and of course they listened. They didn't just dismiss things as, oh, you're just a worried mom or whatever. So I hadn't actually seen the doctor until my 3rd appointment, and your first appointment is just an intake appointment where you see the nurse, and she talks to you about nutrition and tries to figure out dates, history, of all of your OBGYN issues. And we went in and had the ultrasound. She was really thorough. I showed up early because I always try to take an after lunch appointment, number 1, because they're less prone to being behind schedule and making you sit for a long time, and then that will free up more time for my husband because he's got the kids at his office. And he's not usually in the office. He's usually in a semi-truck making fuel deliveries. So they did the ultrasound. A 17-week ultrasound photo of the baby. So everything checked out really good. Sorry, I had to do a little bit of editing there. I'm not quite ready to show the baby bump yet, so we're going to save that for a separate video. Little baby does not have a name yet. I have a very hard time naming my kids before I see them. I always try to have a few names picked out, And this one is hard for me. So we're going through the boy names, we're going through the girl names, and somewhere I have a really good book called The Baby Name Wizard. And it's all available online now, but it's not as in-depth as the book. In that book, I have stashed lists of previous names that we didn't choose, that were like second choice names and runner-up names. I'd like to see the baby and decide from there. Bethany is the only baby that had a name before she was born. My philosophy is that I don't want a common name. I want my baby to know that we took time in choosing it. We're not trying to be original and off, course from everybody else, but my husband likes to name the kids something from like our heritage, where there's Scottish and Irish. We have Native American Indian, and I think there's German in there too, but I'm not for certain. So I'd like to see the baby's face and know that it's going to suit them. I don't just decide on a name. We make lists over and over. And, of course, I think every parent does and should take the time to consider consequences of unusual names. Murdoch was a really, really hard one for me. And at the time, my husband was thinking of different variations of that. And around the time he was born, there was the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie baby, where it was Maddox, and we had Maddox picked out, but not with an X. And somehow we just came up with Murdoch the day before I got induced with him, and we kind of thought about it overnight, and I got induced the next day. So we had about 12 hours to kind of think about it. And when we saw him, it fit him. And when I introduced him to people, I always had a hard time with, this is Murdoch. His name is definitely unusual, and at first it was just Baby Doc. And nobody calls him Doc now except for our old neighbors, because they never really realized that we stopped calling him that because he was probably 3 when we moved away. Everyone just calls him Murdoch. And so Bethany had her name before she was born, and I have a couple girl names up my sleeve, and I have second choice names for boys, but nothing set in stone yet. So we're going to be working on that baby boy name, and try to come up with something for that. And then I've got my little girl names. I like the old-fashioned girl names. So I'm really thinking towards a Maggie or a Claire. And, we just want to meet the baby before we decide on anything. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening to my rants. And this is really becoming a pregnancy vlog, so I'm going to be separating it from the rest of the channel. I have to work on that a little bit. But check in for farm updates and other things that are going on with the family and the homeschooling and our adventure as a pregnant couple again. Bye.